The Senate chamber was abuzz with tension. Senators filled the room, their voices rising in heated debates over the separatist crisis. The battle on Geonosis had left no room for doubt. The Republic was at war. Chancellor Palpatine stood at the podium, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the urgency of the moment. He spoke with practiced precision, his words carefully chosen to manipulate the Senate. "Delegates of the Republic, the separatists will not relent," he began, his voice smooth. "They march upon us with droid armies, without conscience, without mercy. But we are not defenseless. By the wisdom of this Senate and the bravery of Master Yoda, we now command a grand army of the Republic. Yet an army is only as strong as its leaders. The galaxy looks to the Jedi, guardians of peace for 1,000 generations, to lead our forces into battle." The chamber erupted in applause, the Senate's support for Palpatine's proposal apparent. But Mace Windu, standing among the Jedi Council, wasn't swayed. He waited for the noise to subside before stepping forward, his voice unwavering. "Without the Jedi, the Republic will crumble. We must guide you, but we cannot become generals," Windu declared, his words heavy with the weight of centuries-old tradition. "The Jedi swore an oath to protect peace and justice. We are not soldiers. If we become generals in your war, we betray everything the Jedi Order was built upon." The room fell into shocked murmurs. Some senators exchanged glances, their faces a mixture of outrage and uncertainty. A few leaned forward, their expressions full of skepticism. Bul Organa, ever the loyalist to Palpatine, studied Windu closely. "Master Windu, none doubt the nobility of your order," Gana said, his voice calm but firm. "But ideals alone cannot stop separatist warships from raining fire upon our worlds. You must see the danger. Without your guidance, countless lives will be lost." The chamber buzzed with tension. Some senators voiced their support for Windu's stance, while others openly criticized the Jedi, accusing them of hiding behind their code. The debate escalated, with each side digging in its heels. "We must protect the Republic, but we cannot do so by abandoning the Jedi way," Windu continued, his voice steady despite the rising anger around him. "To lead armies is to forsake everything we stand for. That path leads only to darkness." In the silence that followed, the Senate seemed divided, a rift widening between those who wanted the Jedi to lead and those who believed the Jedi's principles were incompatible with war. Palpatine's face remained neutral, but his eyes betrayed the simmering fury beneath the surface. The Jedi's refusal to lead the Grand Army of the Republic had thrown a wrench in Palpatine's plans. The Senate was left to make a difficult decision. In the days that followed, clone commanders were promoted to lead the legions, and retired officers were hastily called upon to fill the leadership void. Some were competent, but many were inexperienced and unprepared. Inside the Jedi Temple, the Council convened in somber deliberation. The weight of their decision was clear. Without their leadership, the Republic might falter. Entire systems could fall. Yet, if they chose to lead, they would betray the very principles that defined them. "We cannot abandon the Republic," Mace Windu argued. "But we cannot become soldiers. Our duty is to protect the Republic's soul, not to sacrifice it in the name of war." Yoda, ever the voice of wisdom, added his thoughts. "The clones are bred for this war. They will fight with loyalty. But our duty is to ensure the Republic does not lose itself in the process. We must hold fast to who we are." Despite their reservations, the Council knew the Republic's survival was at stake. But the cost of compromise was too great. They could not win by becoming generals. The Jedi were guardians, not instruments of war. To fight would mean losing everything they had sworn to protect. The war raged on. The first year brought staggering losses. Separatist fleets tore through the Outer Rim defenses, and Republic generals, though brave, stumbled into traps set by Dooku and Grievous. Clones fought valiantly, but without proper leadership, their victories were few and far between. The Senate, growing impatient, demanded the Jedi reconsider. Some senators, loyal to Palpatine, accused the Jedi of cowardice. "The Jedi hide behind their code while our armies die," one senator cried. "They fear responsibility. They wish to preserve their own sanctity while others suffer." But Padmam Amidala stood firm in defense of the Jedi. The Jedi have defended this republic for centuries without seeking power or war, she countered. To demand that they lead armies is to demand that they abandon who they are. If this conflict is to be fought, it must be fought by those who have chosen to fight. The Senate was split. Trust in the Jedi began to fracture and Palpatine's patience wore thin. The losses mounted and the anger of the people grew. In private, Palpatine's fury simmered. He could not afford to let the Jedi maintain their stance. The Republic needed their support, and he would stop at nothing to make sure they were discredited. While Palpatine bided his time, the Jedi continued their work as guardians. They saved lives, but the burden of war weighed heavily on them. Anakin Skywalker, caught between the Council's restraint, Padme's pleas, and Palpatine's temptations, found himself torn. His heart ached for the clones who died in battle, and he struggled with the feeling that his talents were being wasted on humanitarian missions instead of leading the charge against the Separatists. Meanwhile, Count Dooku, growing impatient with Palpatine's delays, took matters into his own hands. He led a brutal assault on Coruscant, determined to seize power for himself. But the Jedi, freed from the burden of leading armies, responded with clarity and precision. Anakin and Obi-Wan fought through Dooku's forces, determined to stop him. The final confrontation came in a throne room, where Dooku stood ready to face the Jedi. "Tell me, Skywalker," Dooku sneered, "do you ever tire of being their weapon? Sent to clean up their failures?" Anakin, driven by anger and a sense of betrayal, was determined to end the war. "You've led armies that burned worlds, butchered millions. Your time is over." The duel was intense, a clash of light and dark. Obi-Wan's precise strikes met Dooku's calculated movements, while Anakin's fury pushed him closer to victory. But as Dooku knelt, defeated, it was Palpatine's words that would set the course for Anakin's fate. "You've done well, Anakin," Palpatine praised, his voice dripping with manipulation. "Join me, and together we can end this war. You have the power to reshape the galaxy." "Don't let the Jedi's ideals stand in your way," Anakin, torn between his loyalty to the Jedi and the temptation of Palpatine's promises, hesitated. It was in that moment of doubt that the Senate erupted in chaos and the truth about Palpatine's true nature was finally exposed. As the war raged on, the Jedi remained true to their oath, guardians of peace and protectors of the Republic. They may have been forced to watch the Republic tear itself apart, but they refused to become the very thing they had sworn to oppose. Generals in a war that threatened to consume everything. The question remained, what if the Jedi had joined the war? Would the Republic have been saved, or would the galaxy have fallen even deeper into the darkness of war? The answer lies not in the battles fought, but in the choices made by those who stood against the tide of corruption and chaos. The Senate chamber was a hive of activity. Senators filled the floor, their voices rising in heated debates as they grappled with the Separatist crisis. The battle on Geonosis had made it clear the Republic was at war. At the center of it all stood Chancellor Palpatine, his expression calm, his voice carrying the weight of authority. He spoke with a smooth and deliberate tone, aiming to rally the Senate to his side. "Delegates of the Republic," Palpatine began, "the Separatists will not relent. They march upon us with droid armies, without conscience, without mercy. But we are not defenseless. By the wisdom of this Senate and the bravery of Master Yoda, we now command a grand army of the Republic. Yet an army is only as strong as its leaders. The galaxy looks to the Jedi, guardians of peace for 1,000 generations, to lead our forces into battle." A wave of applause echoed through the chamber, senators rising from their pods in agreement. The Republic had a grand army now, and they needed the Jedi to guide it. The Jedi, revered as defenders of peace, were the only force capable of leading the Republic to victory. Master Mace Windu, standing among the Jedi Council, listened quietly, his face an impassive mask. As the chamber erupted in support for Palpatine's call to arms, Windu knew that the Jedi were being thrust into a moral quagmire. Finally, as the applause died down, Windu stepped forward, his presence commanding the room's attention. His voice rang out with certainty, cutting through the noise of the Senate. "Without the Jedi, the Republic will crumble," he said, his words clear and strong. "But we cannot be soldiers. The Jedi swore an oath to protect peace and justice. We are not generals. If we lead your armies, we betray everything the Jedi Order was built upon. A sudden hush fell over the Senate. Senators exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond. Some were outraged, others unsure, but all were shocked by the Jedi's refusal. The very idea of the Jedi refusing to lead the Grand Army of the Republic was a bold statement, one that could have far-reaching consequences. Senator Balorgana, a staunch supporter of Palpatine, leaned forward on his pod, his eyes narrowing as he studied Windu. "Master Windu," he said, his voice calm but firm, "none doubt the nobility of your order. But ideals alone cannot stop separatist warships from raining fire upon our worlds. You must see the danger. Without your guidance, countless lives will be lost." Murmurs filled the chamber. The Senate was divided. Some senators were now openly angry, accusing the Jedi of hiding behind their code. Others, like Padma Amidala, defended the Jedi's decision, insisting that their role as guardians of peace must remain untouched by the corruption of war. "We must protect the Republic," Padma spoke out, her voice resonating with a mix of defiance and resolve. "But we cannot do so by abandoning who we are. The Jedi have never sought power or war. If you demand that we lead armies, you ask us to abandon everything we stand for." The words of the Jedi echoed through the chamber, dividing the Senate further. Some senators applauded Padma's defense of the Jedi, while others scoffed at their reluctance. The idea of the Jedi refusing to lead the war struck a deep chord in the hearts of many senators, particularly those who had been swayed by Palpatine's persuasive rhetoric. Mace Windu stood his ground, his gaze unwavering. "If this conflict is to be fought, it must be fought by those who have chosen to fight," he said. "The Jedi have sworn to protect, not to command armies. Our responsibility lies with the living, not with the Senate's thirst for war." The tension in the chamber thickened, and Palpatine, ever the manipulator, seized the opportunity to intervene. His voice, calm and composed, rose once again. "Very well," he said, his tone sounding conciliatory, but with an edge of impatience creeping into his words. "The Jedi will serve as guardians, as they always have. The Grand Army will be led by its own officers, chosen by this Senate. We will trust the wisdom of the Jedi to guide us in spirit, even if not in battle." His words were met with a mix of nods and grumbles. The Jedi had refused to lead, and Palpatine had been forced to accept their decision, though he did so with a hidden fury simmering beneath the surface. In the following days, the Republic moved quickly. Clone commanders were promoted to lead the legions, and retired officers were brought back into service. Some of these officers were competent, and their leadership helped stabilize the Republic's defenses. Others, however, proved reckless or indecisive, and their actions led to significant losses on the battlefield. Inside the Jedi Temple, the Council convened once more. The somber atmosphere weighed heavily on them. Without their leadership, the Republic might falter. Entire systems could fall to the Separatists. But if they agreed to lead, they would be abandoning their sacred oath. "We cannot lead armies," Windu spoke once more, his voice heavy with the weight of the Jedi's responsibility. "Our duty is to protect the Republic's soul, not to sacrifice it in the name of war." Yoda, sitting beside him, nodded in agreement. "The clones are bred for war," Yoda said, his voice low and filled with wisdom. "They will fight with loyalty. But our duty is to ensure the Republic does not lose its way. We must hold fast to our principles." Despite the mounting pressure, the Council knew they could not abandon their role as guardians. The Republic's soul was at stake, and compromise would only lead to its destruction. They could not lead armies. They could only guide the Republic in spirit. The war continued to escalate. The Separatists, led by Count Dooku and General Grievous, struck deep into the heart of the Republic. The battles were fierce and the casualties mounted. The Senate, now fully aware of the Jedi's refusal to lead, became increasingly vocal in its criticism. Some senators, loyal to Palpatine, lashed out at the Jedi, accusing them of cowardice. "The Jedi hide behind their code while our armies die," one senator shouted. "They fear responsibility. They wish to preserve their own sanctity while others suffer." But Padma remained firm, defending the Jedi's choice. "The Jedi have defended this Republic for centuries without seeking power or war," she countered. "To demand that they lead armies is to demand that they abandon who they are." If this conflict is to be fought, it must be fought by those who have chosen to fight. The debate raged on, and Palpatine's patience continued to wear thin. The Jedi's refusal had complicated his plans, but he would find a way to break them. The Republic's war machine continued to churn, and the Jedi's role in the conflict became increasingly uncertain. Would they remain steadfast in their commitment to peace, or would the galaxy's descent into war change them forever? As the war raged on, the Jedi remained guardians, unwilling to take the path of generals. The Republic, however, would soon find itself on the brink of collapse, as the forces of darkness pressed forward with increasing strength. The galaxy was at a crossroads, and the Jedi's refusal to lead the war would have consequences far beyond their expectations.